Happy Monday, everyone. How was your weekend? As you can see, I got the big cup today for the coffee to start out this Monday week. We had a good weekend. I hope you had a good weekend. Busy? Did you all have a busy week? Too hot to be really too busy, right? But there were some things going on. Yesterday after church, we were at a birthday party. It was a great party. Had lots of people there and got to see a lot of folks, some I hadn't seen for a long time. And in the group, I didn't know this at the time, but in the group there were 3 couples that I had married. And so that was good. It was good to be reminded of that and to see everyone. We had a great day. It was a great party. Good food. Oh my gosh, some good food, and just a great Sunday on being such a hot day. It was a good way. We spent it very well. So I hope you were content whatever happened this weekend. Just kind of chilling, although it's kind of hard to chill when it was so warm, but it's going to be warmer yet still. Down here in southern Illinois, it's going to be warmer still in the next several days, and then they say it's going to get cool. They didn't say it's going to get cool, they said it's going to get cooler. So instead of being in the high 90s, we might be in the mid to upper 80s. And but anyway, we will get through it. We'll get through it. So just drop me a note in the comments, if you will. Tell me how your weekend went, what you were doing, and if you were busy, if you were chilling. Just let us know how you spent your weekend. I hope it was you spent some time in worship and Bible study with other people. It's always so important to do that. Okay, this is Coffee with Wes for Monday, in case you need to be reminded, Monday, August the 18th, 2025. Get us a good sip of that coffee. And my name is Wes. I serve as the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Cutler in Cutler, Illinois. Thanks for coming in today. Come in, have a seat. Hey, I want to tell you a story. So at church one Sunday, guy was sitting in the pew, and it was time for the offering. The offering plate comes by, and he was kind of perturbed a little bit, giving an offering. So he reached into his pocket and he pulled out some coins, put them in the offering plate, gets ready to pass it on to the next person. Somebody taps him on the shoulder from behind, hands him a $20 bill. And he's like pretty impressed with that offering, $20 bill. So he places it in the offering plate, and he passes it on to the next person. And then almost immediately the person behind him taps him on the shoulder again and kind of whispers to him, and he said, hey, I just wanted you to know that was your $20 bill that fell out of your pocket when you were pulling out some change. And the offering plate had already gone by. Okay. The big idea of our study today, of our discussion today, is that God's grace is not just something that we receive. God's grace transforms us into givers, cheerful givers. And I don't know how cheerful that guy was giving his $20 bill in the offering plate, but God's grace transforms us into givers. And scripture I want to read is from 2 Corinthians 8, verse 1. Actually, I should be reading verses 1 and 2, but I just have verse 1 here. Paul says, now I want you to know, dear brothers and sisters, what God in his grace has done through the churches in Macedonia. And then verse 2 goes on to say that the church, out of its great poverty and much persecution, was able to give a gift. And so Paul is writing to the Corinthians, referring to the example of the churches in Macedonia. So he's writing to the churches in Corinth about what the churches in Macedonia were able to do. And they gave generously, even though they themselves faced extreme poverty and many trials and tribulations. You can go ahead and read that verse 2. Their generosity was a direct result of the grace of God who was at work in their lives. Now, a little bit more of a background here. I don't want to get down into the weeds because we just have such a short time here, but this is important. So Paul begins here in verse 1 of chapter 8 of 2 Corinthians setting up this larger section that goes on through chapter 9, in which Paul is urging the believers in Corinth to follow through on their earlier commitment to support the church in Jerusalem. So Paul is out collecting this offering for the saints and the people and the believers in Jerusalem who are going through terrible trouble, and it's kind of like just a help offering, if you will. And the churches in Corinth said, hey, we'll help, we'll contribute. Yeah, you can count, Paul, you can count on us to give. Well, they made the commitment, and they were finding all sorts of reasons as to why they couldn't give to the offering. And so Paul is reminding them, hey, listen, the churches in Macedonia are in extreme poverty. They're worse off than you could ever think of. They're facing all kinds of trials, and yet the grace of God is working in them, and they're giving their offering, and you should do the same because you've made the commitment to do that. But Paul doesn't begin with a command, doesn't tell them to, ante up. He starts with grace. So here's an application. So as we begin this study this week, talking about generosity, I want you to remember, I want you to get into your head, maybe you need to write it down, that generosity does not come from guilt, okay? We can't guilt people into being generous. Generosity doesn't come from pressure. You pressure people to be generous. Generosity doesn't come out of abundance. You would think that the more we have, the more generous people would be. That's not where generosity comes from. Folks, generosity comes from grace. From grace. When we reflect, when we think about what God has given to us, when we think about God's grace in our life, we are moved to mirror God's heart. God was so gracious to us that we want to be gracious to others. Not guilting you, not pressuring you at all. But just think about that. And generosity isn't just about money, but it includes money. But it's not just about money. It's about being generous with our time, generous with our attention, generous with our encouragement, generous with our love for others, and all of that is fueled, I can use that term, is fueled by the grace that we have received from the Lord. So we are not to be guilted or pressured or expected to be generous. Generosity comes from the heart. So here's a closing thought before we go on this Monday. Let me get another quick sip of coffee here, if you're still with me. Let the grace of God be your source or your motivation for giving. Before you give anything else, give yourself fully to the Lord. And you know what happens? When you give yourself fully to the Lord transforms your heart and He makes you generous. If you're we're going to talk about it this week, but if you're having difficulty being generous, let me encourage you, give yourself to the Lord. Go to the Lord and see if the Lord doesn't change your heart about giving cheerfully to those that are in need and to God's kingdom. Okay, folks, have a great Monday. Tackle it. Be careful. It's hot out there if you got to be outside. And I'll see you again tomorrow, maybe. Y'all have a great day. And we'll talk to you later. And bye for now.